My name is Clara Hale. I'm 30 years old, and until last week I thought I had a permanent place in my parents' house in Burlington, Vermont. That home wasn't just timber and shingles. It was the place where I had poured my 20s, my energy, and even my future savings. It stood as proof that family meant endurance, that my sacrifices weren't in vain. Or at least, that's what I believed. The truth snapped at a dinner table. The evening began as usual. Roast chicken in the centre, my father's favourite green beans with slivered almonds, my mother's antique silverware gleaming under the dining light. But tension hung thick, the kind that tastes metallic on the tongue before words even land. My father, Daniel, chewed quietly, his eyes on his plate like a man studying escape routes. My mother, Margaret, kept darting glances at me. My sister, Veronica, had just flown in from California, her hair salon perfect, her perfume intruding into every breath I took. Then it happened. Margaret's fork slammed against the oak table with a crack that cut through the silence. She leaned forward, eyes sharp as glass. "You have 48 hours to get your things out, Clara," she said, her voice low but vicious. "This house belongs to your sister now." The world tilted. My father gave the smallest nod, unable to meet my gaze. And Veronica? She smirked, as though this was the scene she'd rehearsed on her flight. I froze. My body remained in the chair, but my pulse thundered as though it wanted out. Every wall in that home whispered of my sweat, my late nights, the bills I'd covered when the bank threatened foreclosure. And now, like a thief in my own life, I was being told to pack up and vanish. I studied them. My father's silence, my mother's hardness, Veronica's entitlement. Years of loyalty erased in one sentence. A cruel verdict, no jury. The roast chicken turned to ash in my mouth. My hands itched to slam She'd be stepping into a reality she couldn't control. She would regret it. So would they. The betrayal was sharp, but sharper still was the plan taking shape in my mind. The night after that dinner, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in the bed I had once thought of as permanent, staring at the ceiling where the light from the street lamp etched faint stripes through the blinds. Every creak of the old house felt like it was testing my memory, reminding me of the countless hours I had spent keeping it alive. 5 years ago, my parents were drowning. Dad had been laid off from the paper mill, and Mom's boutique was collapsing under debt. The mortgage was 3 months overdue when the bank threatened foreclosure. I can still see it, the pile of envelopes on the kitchen table, the red final notice stamped across one, Dad's head in his hands, Mom pacing the linoleum floor like a caged animal. That was when I stepped in. At 25, I had just landed a solid job as a software engineer. My salary wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I drained my savings, $40,000 in one swoop. Worked back-to-back overtime shifts until my eyes blurred from staring at code. Over 3 years, I poured nearly $82,000 into the mortgage until the deed was safe again. I told myself it wasn't charity, it was family. The day I handed Mom the final payment receipt, she hugged me like I'd rescued her from a fire. Dad said nothing, just muttered something about being proud. And for one fleeting moment, I believed I had secured my place here forever. But it wasn't just money. I poured my heart into these walls. I repainted the living room a warm beige when the old wallpaper peeled like dead skin. I replaced warped floorboards one Saturday at a time, my knees bruised from kneeling. I fixed the creaky staircase, each nail I hammered like a vow to keep this place standing. With my first big paycheck, I bought a gray sofa, plush, modern, the kind of thing you imagine raising a family around. Meanwhile, Veronica lived like a phantom. My parents smiled politely, but never echoed the pride. One memory stuck like a thorn. I was sanding the porch railing one summer, sweat dripping, my arms sore, when my grandfather's words echoed back from years earlier. Sitting on that same porch, his weathered hand on my shoulder, he had said, "Clara, This place will always be yours. You're the one who loves it. At the time, I thought it was just sentiment. Grandparents always make you feel special. But now, after that dinner, I couldn't stop hearing it differently. A promise. Maybe even a truth. And if it was a truth, then what my parents did last night wasn't just favoritism. It was theft. The air in my room grew suffocating, anger and disbelief clawing at my chest. I couldn't stay still. I opened my laptop and began typing. Not rage-filled paragraphs, but a list. Dates, payments, repairs. A record of everything I had given this house. Proof. They thought I was powerless. They thought I would pack quietly. But I had a weapon they'd underestimated. The truth. And I was ready to use it. The following morning, I brewed coffee in the chipped mug that once belonged to my grandfather. Its rim was uneven, its glaze cracked, but I cradled it like armour. My mother's voice from dinner still echoed in my skull. 48 hours. My father's silence was worse, an endorsement carved from cowardice. I needed clarity, not just rage. So I called the one person who had never flinched when life got ugly. Rowan Bennett. We'd been best friends since college in Burlington. Where I had gone into coding, Rowan had pursued law. And not just any law, estate law, the kind that lived in loopholes and signatures. When she answered, her tone was brisk but warm. "Clara, what's wrong?" The words tumbled out, the slammed fork, the ultimatum, my father's nod, Veronica's smirk. I laid it all bare while pacing the kitchen tiles until the grout passed. Prophetic. The hour crawled. I tore through an old storage box, finding photographs of him planting tulips in the yard, letters scribbled in his messy handwriting. Each artifact was a small dagger reminding me of what had been stripped from me. When the phone finally rang, my pulse slammed in my ears. "Clara." Rowan's voice was clipped with urgency. "I found it. Your grandfather's will." I stopped breathing. He filed it 3 years before he died. The property wasn't left to your parents at all. It was left, she paused for emphasis, to you. Sole beneficiary, no contingencies. The room spun. "What?" I whispered. "It's notarized, sealed, ironclad. Clara, this house was always yours. Your parents had access to the will and they chose not to tell you." The betrayal sliced deeper than anything my mother had said at that dinner table. They hadn't just chosen Veronica over me. They had hidden my grandfather's last wish. Watched me sink $82,000 into a mortgage I never owed, all while planning to hand the home to someone who barely remembered which side the porch faced. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but they weren't of grief anymore. They were of rage. Hot, righteous, undeniable. Rowan's voice steadied me. "Listen to me, we can enforce this will, file a claim. Legally, this house is yours. They played a dangerous game, Clara, and it's about to backfire." My hand shook as I set the mug down, but my jaw locked. My parents thought they had stripped me of everything, but in truth, I was the only rightful heir. For the first time in years, I felt the scales shift in my favor. "They want 48 hours, I murmured almost to myself. "Fine. In 48 hours, they'll wish they'd never tried." The next morning, the house felt different, like a museum of betrayals. Every item carried weight, a reminder of what I'd given and what they had stolen. I walked through each, tagging chairs, appliances, and rugs. I felt an odd calm, as though reclaiming myself piece by piece. The house grew quieter with each label, hollowing out in preparation for the truth that was about to hit my parents like a storm. Around 10, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped, expecting the movers early, but instead I found Mrs. Linda from across the street, balancing a plate of blueberry muffins. Her silver hair was tied in a neat bun, her eyes soft with concern. "Clara, I've seen you pacing since last night. Are you all right?" she asked gently. I forced a smile, my throat tight. "Just changes," I might be moving some things out. Her brows knitted. You've always been good to this house. Your grandfather used to say you were its backbone. She pressed the plate into my hands and gave my arm a squeeze. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Her words nearly undid me. Minutes later, Mr. William shuffled over, boots still muddy from his morning shift at the hardware store. He looked around the yard, then back at me. This place meant a lot to your granddad. Everyone knew he wanted it for you. I swallowed hard, unable to answer. Their quiet support grounded me more than they realized. It reminded me that I wasn't crazy. My sacrifices hadn't gone unseen, even if my parents chose blindness. By noon, the movers arrived, 3 men in a white truck. They worked quickly, wrapping the sofa, lifting the washer, securing the TV. I directed them like a general reclaiming her spoils. Each thud of furniture being carried out echoed like justice. I was in the middle of boxing books from the shelves when I heard it. The sharp, impatient knock at the door. My stomach clenched. I opened it to find Veronica, suitcase at her side, her heels clicking on the stoop as if the house already bent to her command. Her expression flickered from annoyance to confusion as she glanced past me into the hollowed living room. What the hell happened in here? What I worked for. You didn't spend a dime here, Veronica. Not one. She whirled on me, her face flushed. Oh, give me a break. You think throwing some money around makes this your shrine? Mum and Dad trusted me with this house for a reason. You stayed behind because you couldn't hack it anywhere else. Pity kept you here, Clara, not value. Her words cut, but I'd bled enough already. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Pity? I saved this house when you were sipping cocktails in San Francisco. I paid the mortgage. I rebuilt it board by board. Without me, this place would have been swallowed by the bank years ago. And you sent postcards. Veronica laughed, bitter and hollow. You sound desperate. Face it, you're the placeholder, Clara. I'm the one they actually want. For a moment, the silence between us thickened, suffocating. My chest ached, not just with anger, but with the sharp grief of finally admitting what I had always known. My parents didn't see me. Not really. But then, a different strength rose up. They may want you, I said, stepping forward, my voice low, deliberate. But the law doesn't. This house was never theirs to give, her smirk faltered. What are you talking about? I let the pause hang just long enough to unnerve her. Grandfather's will. It's ironclad. He left the house to me. Not Mum, not Dad, and sure as hell not you. Her face drained of colour. She staggered back a step, then quickly masked it with outrage. You're lying. Am I? I pulled my phone from my pocket, the scanned document glowing on the screen. Rowan had sent it only hours before. I held it out just far enough for her to glimpse the legal header. You can scream all you want, but the county clerk doesn't lie. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone. I'm calling Mum. Go ahead, I said coolly. They thought I was powerless. They thought I'd be erased. They had no idea what storm was already bearing down on them. By the time night fell, my phone was buzzing non-stop. My parents' names lit the screen over and over, alternating like sirens. I let every call roll to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear their voices, not after what I had set in motion. Instead, I sat at Rowan's apartment downtown, surrounded by stacks of legal folders and the steady hum of her laptop. The smell of her coffee filled the air, grounding me as adrenaline coursed through my veins. When I finally pressed play on the first voicemail, my mother's voice screeched through the speaker. Clara, what have you done? There's a stranger in our house. He says he owns it now. Explain yourself this instant. My father's voice broke in, lower, strained. Clara, some man showed us the deed. He claims he bought the property. How could you? I pressed stop. My hand trembled, but not from guilt, from the strange relief of hearing panic on their end for once. Rowan didn't look up from her screen. They're not wrong, a stranger does own it. I pushed the will into motion this morning. Once it became clear the house legally belonged to you, an investor I know jumped at the chance to buy. It's all filed, sealed, and irreversible. Her words landed like thunder. So, it's gone, just like that. Rowan met my eyes finally, her gaze firm. You didn't lose the house, Clara. You enforced the truth. Your grandfather wanted you to have the power. By selling, you cut your parents off from manipulating it ever again. They can't dangle it, can't use it to control you. It's over. I sank back into the chair, my pulse heavy in my throat. Images of the living room, the porch, the beige walls flickered through my mind. The house I had built piece by piece was gone, but not stolen. Chosen. On my terms. My phone buzzed again. This time, I'm done. Talk to Rowan if you want answers. I ended the call, tossing the phone onto the table like it burned. Rowan leaned back in her chair, a small smile tugging at her lips. They're panicking. Good. They should. The new owner has the deed. They can't undo it. I exhaled, my chest heavy, my body trembling from the weight of it all. The home I once thought would define me was gone, but so were the chains that bound me to their betrayal. For the first time in years, I felt something new. Freedom. Weeks passed like a blur. By the time the paperwork settled, I was no longer the woman sitting at that dinner table, begging silently for recognition. I was someone else, someone lighter, sharper, untethered. I signed a lease on a small apartment near the lake in Burlington. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. My sofa, my TV, the curtains I had tagged and carried out of that house. They fit perfectly in the new space, like they had been waiting for this fresh start all along. Each item whispered not of sacrifice, but survival. Meanwhile, word of my parents' deception spread faster than wildfire through our tight-knit neighborhood. Mrs. Linda and Mr. William didn't keep quiet. They told others what had happened, how my parents tried to bury my grandfather's will, how they tried to cut me out. And Burlington is the kind of place where reputations are currency. Soon, people who once admired my parents crossed the street instead of waving. Their perfect family image cracked. My father, once proud of his status at the paper mill before his layoff, now faced the shame of neighbors whispering in grocery aisles. My mother, who prided herself on appearances, suddenly found herself excluded from coffee groups and church luncheons. The betrayal wasn't just mine anymore. It became public record. And Veronica? She scrambled. She had flown in expecting a fully furnished inheritance, only to discover bare walls and a legally airtight sale. Back in California, she was forced to buy her own place, a condo far smaller than I left my old company and took a leap into a smaller tech startup in town, a place where my ideas weren't dismissed as side projects, but valued. My days became meetings filled with collaboration, evenings spent arranging my new space, mornings walking along the lakefront as the mist curled off the water. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. One afternoon, over coffee, Rowan looked at me with that lawyer's grin of hers. You realize what you did, don't you? What? I asked. You ended their control. They thought the house would keep you chained to them forever. Instead, you turned it into the very thing that freed you. I stared into my mug, her words settling deep. She was right. For years, I had let those walls define my worth. But worth wasn't in bricks or deeds. It was in the line I had finally drawn. My grandfather's voice came back to me then, clearer than ever. This place will always be yours. He hadn't just meant the house. He had meant strength, resolve, the ability to walk away with my head high. And for the first time, I believed him. Months later, I stood in my apartment by the lakefront, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor. The morning air smelled of coffee and fresh bread from the bakery downstairs, a far cry from the suffocating tension of my parents' dining table. My sofa sat against the wall, the same one I had once bled over time hours to buy. But here, it wasn't a reminder of betrayal, it was a trophy of survival. I traced my fingers along the curtains I'd chosen, the same beige fabric I had hung in the Burlington house. Only now, they framed a window that looked out over freedom, not judgment. Every object I had rescued carried new meaning. They weren't just things. They were proof that I could rebuild my life from the rubble of theirs. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Veronica since that night. I blocked their numbers, cut the line completely. At first, the silent sex, 0.05, not for being the dependable daughter. Rowan teased me about becoming the queen of boundaries, but I knew she was proud. Without her, I might never have unearthed the will or had the courage to follow it through. One evening, she and I sat on my balcony sipping wine as the lake shimmered gold under the sunset. "You realize," Rowan said, "your grandfather gave you more than property. He gave you a way out." I nodded, tears stinging unexpectedly. She was right. His will wasn't just about land or walls, it was about legacy. He had seen me, the way my parents never did. He trusted me with his home because he trusted my strength. And even though the house was gone, his gift remained. I looked out over the water, the breeze cool against my face. For years, I thought family was something you endure no matter what. But I finally understood. Family is supposed to protect you, not chain you. And when they betray you, the most powerful revenge isn't screaming or begging. It's walking away. I raised my glass, whispering to the night. "Thank you, Grandpa. You were right. This place, this life will always be mine." For the first time in years, the weight lifted. The house was gone, but I was free. And freedom was worth more than any set of keys.